Hello, everybody. It's John Kranz. It's great to be back. I want to welcome you to Compass Games Live, episode 43 for November 5th, calling it number 5. I don't know why I'm missing the letter V there, but I'll buy a vowel or buy a consonant, I guess, to get it right next time. It's been a while since we've had a last chance to talk, so it's great to be with you all again. So I've got quite a bit to cover today. What we're going to do is we're going to look at 2 game projects. One that's been submitted to the printer for some time now that I'd like to show you. We'll lead off with that, and then what I'll do is we'll get right into our special guest, David McDonough. We'll be doing that one, Dawn's Early Light, which is the feature of tonight's episode. And then I'm gonna give you one more game project update for a game that's going to the printers next week. So it's been a while that we've really covered some projects, especially ones that are getting ready to go to the printer or at the printer. So I want to make sure that we can do that. So again, it's great to have you all here, even having somebody from Seoul, South Korea, I noticed. So welcome from Seoul, South Korea. It's great to have you. I'm not sure what time it is over there for you, but also from Australia, we have somebody joining us from Australia. So it's great to have you all. As always, I want to give you a quick update from the website. So reminder about the holiday catalog, just hit the banner. You'll be able to download a PDF or just the order form by itself, so you can go ahead and place an order. Also, that yellow box to the left, you want to definitely get in your subscription for our newsletter. We'll talk about that in a moment. And then at the bottom right, where you sort of see me waving a little bit saying talk to us, we've been getting 3 to 5 responses every day now. So thanks so much for all those responses. Really appreciate it. As far as the newsletter itself, when you do that, we're going to send you just one newsletter a week. We're not going to overrun your email box, but just to let you know what it looks like when you do get the newsletter by your email. Again, we just put this out this morning, so if you've got that, great. Hope you received it okay. So we announced Devil's Boat on Kickstarter. That was last week that we started Devil Boats. It's doing quite well, actually. It's got over 100 pledge in terms of support. It's got over 100 folks that have already pledged the game. You can also download the rules from the Kickstarter page. Just click on the link and you'll learn more about Devil's Boat. It's a solitaire game, which is always very popular. So we're very happy to be able to provide that. There was some questions or comments. Some folks were confused that had already pre-ordered Devil's Boats, and they were wondering, it's on Kickstarter now, so does that mean the game's not going to come out for another 6 months or 9 months? So I want you to rest assured that we always use Kickstarter just as a vehicle to get the word out to maybe to a different audience than typically shows up on our website for pre-orders. So this will actually be one of the first games we release right after the new year. So it should be released in January. So Kickstarter is just another way to help get the word out, and it's actually worked pretty well. We've got over, like I said, over 100 pledges for the game. If you've already pre-ordered, though, you don't have to do anything. You don't have to do a Kickstarter pledge. You've already pre-ordered, so you are good to go. But I would definitely check out the rules that are available on the Kickstarter page that's online. And thanks for everybody for the support. I know Joe Carter, the designer, is really excited to see what support he's getting for his game. It makes him very happy to see that, and we're very happy for him as well. So again, the reminder about the holiday catalog. Again, we've got information here in the newsletter that also includes our pre-order palooza that I was doing a little over a month ago that pretty much wore me out, getting all those pre-order pages ready, but we've listed all the new pre-orders are also listed here with direct links. Also, as you well know, our last release was an Attrition of Souls. I do have to update our website header because that was actually released already. But Attrition of Souls, that's been out for a few weeks, and I've been seeing some really nice replay comments. I think there was 1 or 2 on Board Game Geek already, a few on the Console World forum, on Facebook. So the few I've seen have been very positive, saying it's a relatively simple game to get into, but the biggest comment was the replayability of the game, that you get widely different results as you play the game multiple times, and we're really happy to hear that. This is what we're here for tonight, so really excited again to have David here joining us. We'll be doing that just in a moment to discuss his game Dawn's Early Light, so we'll be doing that here just in a moment for our broadcast. And again, that's pretty much the newsletter. So definitely I want to thank you for all your support on that. What I'd like to do now is I want to switch over, and what I'd like to do just for a moment is give you an update on a 2-player game, which can definitely be played solitaire because there's a solitaire play aid card that comes with it, what we call a solitaire bot. So I definitely want to share that with you. So I'm going to go ahead and get my screen ready here off to the side, and I want to talk a little bit more about this game. So let me go ahead and do that now. So what we have here, which you'll probably recognize here, and I'll actually just we'll just focus in on this one. We're going to focus on Imperial Tide. That's Gregory Smith's 2-player game, World War I. Think of it as I'd like to compare it to Pass of Glory because the map sort of looks somewhat similar. But this game system, it's like Pacific Tide basically. It's going to be simpler system, play faster, etc. than let's say Pass of Glory. So Pass of Glory is extremely popular, successful game, and then of course Gregory Smith's had a great success with all his solitaire games. But this is a 2-player based on the Pacific Tide system. So again, you can see the front cover here, but I do want to share other components with you. So again, let's go ahead and do that. So I'm just going to focus here and show you the back of the box. And again, if I don't have the back of the box on the website yet, I'll be sure to add the back of the box for Imperial Tide. Again, this has been at the printers for just a few weeks now. So we're really excited to know it's currently underway. Again, think of this as it's a 2-player game. But much like we did with Pacific Tide by Gregory also started as a 2-player game, but then we added a solitaire bot to the game. So you could basically model either an aggressive or defensive or neutral stance by the other side and what actions have to be carried out. So definitely plays well solitaire. Again, a lot of information about the box. I'll make sure the box back which you see here is available on the website. The map itself is beautiful. So Tim Allen was the artist. He did a great job. Notice it's really focusing on the genre. We want to give it a really good historical feel. If you're, again, familiar with Pacific Tide or Ostkrieg, this type of a map with network spaces is going to look very familiar to you. Again, it's the same game system. So here's a really good look at the map to give you an idea. I think I think we're going to get some really good remarks about the overall artwork. Has a lot of good card artwork as well. Counters, there's actually 2 counter sheets, and they're pretty straightforward. On one side is just the normal counter side. On the reverse side is what's called the entrenched side. So infantry, etc., can be in what's called an entrenched mode. So the back side of the counters will have that. As well. So there's counter sheet number 2 as well. And I'm not going to show the player aid cards or anything like that, but I do want to give you a preview of the rules. Just to give you an idea, again, you're not going to be able to read this on my screen, but just to give you an idea of, what's the depth of the rules, the complexity of the rules. As you can see here, and I'm going to zoom in again for you, it's just 16 pages of rules. If you look at the table of contents, it ends with the designer notes on page 15. So it's a very light, it's meant to be a light playing game, not heavy in mechanics. It's I guess your quintessential Gregory Smith game where he's really focusing on playability. Again, a lot of artwork here just to introduce you to the system in general, introduce you to the types of units. The card legend, bottom right, which you can see there. Card play is very important in the game. It's all about the card play and the actions you undertake. But you can see here, starting on not till page 5, we get to setting up the game. So it's very straightforward. It's pretty much a historical setup, at a strategic level. So people were asking, are you going to offer a historical setup for the game? Well, actually, it is historical setup. There's no variance as far as that goes. It's got the neutral power setups. It talks about game bidding, to do bidding if you're doing competitive play. And then we get into the year start. The year start, there's a card for each year with special rules. Talks about how that works. Doing the card purchasing, that's very important. One late development, which you can't really see here too well, maybe I can zoom in just for a moment, is we did sneak in just to make sure it's clear. We got some comments, make sure there's a sequence of play summary. So even though we're explaining the flow of the game, we added just a quick section just to say, here's the basic sequence of how a turn's going to run, a yearly turn's going to run, just to make sure it's 100% understood how that works. And more on that in a second about making sure as far as the learning curve to make sure we keep it as simple as possible. But again, just going through this, we go through the movement mechanics, there's C movement, stacking, attack, different types of attack, the attack limitations, a nice graphic here that gives you a combat example. So it's fully illustrated. You can see the arrow showing where the attack is going to be taking place. So we walk you through a nice example of play. And then basically we just finish up with some special rules, also supply and control, Russian Revolution, add some historical flavor to the game. Of course, we do get into aircraft use, neutral country entry into the war, country surrender, so on and so forth. But I do want to point you to this, which I think is always helpful for a game, is we had one page that we had dedicated here. It's the example of play for the first year. So we think it really helps people to do the very first turn. How do I set up and how would I actually start playing the game? So the first year is really the setup and it's the start of play. So just by following this example of play for the first year, it really didn't need any graphics to go with it. The text is really easy to follow and you've already got the setup at the beginning of the rules that I was showing you earlier. So I think you'll find the overall flow of getting into the game. I don't think you're going to find any hurdles to get into the game. And again, we've got Greg's designer notes here on page 15. And then what I try to do with every project at the end is put a rules index on the back. So you can see we've got an index with a page number for all the keywords, all the key terms for play. So you can do a very quick lookup. Again, the body of rules is only about 11 pages of rules out of the 16 pages. And one thing we added also at the very end is I wanted to add, just as a reference, what all the geographic box locations are by location name. And we've got it organized by country. So that's just a handy reference. It's not necessarily needed for play, but I just thought it would be a nice to have, just so you can have an easy reference to see what spaces we have on the game. So that, in effect, is Imperial Tide. I hope that looks good to you, that you're looking forward to it. I hope you've considered the pre-order for the game. Again, it's going to be another big hit from Gregory M. Smith. We're really, really excited about it. What I'd like to do next now is let's segue right away into our focus for tonight. So Dawn's Early Light. So again, if you're familiar with this game, we just released it, I'd say, in the last 45 days. We did a Kickstarter just a few months ago. So, and I received a lot of questions from people asking about, what can you tell me about the designer? It's a first-time designer. Can you please share more information? I had one person who was very specific. If Compass is going to take my money, I really want to know about the designer and what it's all about. So maybe it's a little late that we have David McDonough on tonight, but I'm very excited to have him, and we'll definitely talk about his design experience and his journey through this design. Also very happy to say we had the rules posted several months ago, so we try to do that for people, especially for new designers, so you can get a good sense of the rules and how they approached the topic. So we were very happy to be able to do that. So what I'd like to do without much further ado is let's go ahead and welcome David McDonough. David, how are you doing tonight?
I'm great. Thanks for having me.
It's great to have you here tonight. And what I'd like to do just to get things started, and I want to give time for our audience to get warmed up, because they're usually very good about asking a lot of questions.
That's great.
And just to give you an idea of the questions, actually, I want to show you something here very quickly that I was able to pull up from our Constant World forum discussion today. So. First of all, we have, I'm going to go here. Steve Mitchell said, I really like Dawn's Early Light. I hope you can have David McDonough do more games for Compass. So really nice comment from Steve Mitchell there that he's give it a big thumbs up. So I wanted you to know about that.
I appreciate it. Thanks, Steve.
Yeah, very good. Another one from Jamie Cribbs. Jamie might be joining us tonight. I'm going to have to check. Jamie's usually a regular here. And Jamie had the comment that you look quite a bit younger than 50 years of age. I'm not going to embarrass you and ask you how old you are. I couldn't embarrass you anyway, because I'm so much older than you. It's not even funny. So you don't even have to go there. You win by a landslide. But all us crusty grognards are always excited to see somebody who can probably run a mile and not break sweat, unlike us older guys, right? That the hobby's going to be in good hands as we get older. So Jamie was just saying, awesome to see a fresh face in the game design business. And yeah, that's why we're going to talk with you tonight and get more details. And then most recently today, we had a longer post from Paul Koenig out in California. This was an interesting one. He talks about some other games that he's really interested in the era, the period 1812. So he's already tried a few other games on 1812, and none of them quite scratched that itch for him. They weren't quite doing it for him for what he was looking for. But in his closing paragraph here, he then just basically a huge thumbs up. He said, Dawn's Early Light definitely was what I was looking for, and just a big thumbs up to the entire Compass crew. But really, all credit to you, David. It's really credit to you for coming up with your design, Dawn's Early Light, and everything you did there. But before we go there,
thank you very much, Paul.
Yeah, very nice for him to say. But let's talk about your background first, since you are such a young kid, probably out of high school. Maybe you can give us a little. Give us a little background where you started. No, not where you started grammar school. You're not that young, but give us a little background. Where do you live? What do you do? If you have a day job, whatever you can feel comfortable sharing with everybody here, because they're going to ask you probably a bunch of questions here in a little bit.
No, not at all. That's my pleasure. I definitely know the dynamic you mean. I really got into games when I'm from Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and I got into games when I started to go to Gen Con with my uncle back when it was in Milwaukee. Yep. And so I definitely know my people who are in the war game space, and I'm proud to be among you. I'm only 36, so hopefully I'll have lots of years of designing and playing in my future. But right now I live in Baltimore, Maryland. Been here about 14 years. So it's a good spot to be in if you're into the War of 1812. And my day job is I work for Firaxis Games, makers of the Civilization series of video games, and I've been a designer at the studio for over 11 or 12 years, and worked on a variety of titles for them, including Civilizations 5 and 6, which is what I'm presently doing. And so this Dawn's Early Light is not my first strategy game, but it is my first non-digital one, my first board game. And so I'm very pleased that some of the skills and experience that I find are applicable to designing Civilization have applied to this game, at least to some extent, and that people are enjoying it. It's a real pleasure to have kind of taken a shot on this game and see that people are out there and that they like it.
That's interesting. I think you're the first designer I think that I've talked to where he actually started his design experience on the digital side, like computer gaming side. But did you say your intro to the hobby was more like the Gen Con era? Were you going to conventions at Gen Con at a younger age? And what got you into the hobby in general? Like, how did you get introduced to gaming at first when you were youngest?
Sure. So like as a kid, I played video games, on the family computer. And as I got older, my uncle, who's a big board gamer, huge, and has been going to Gen Con for decades, took me along. And so I got exposed to just the world of board and especially miniature games. I was into miniature games a lot for a long time. Not that I'm not still, but these days I find I can't afford it. But so that's what exposed me to more in-depth, more complex, and more rewarding types of board games. And so I sort of followed that space through college. And as I got into the games industry, I kept up with it because all of my colleagues are, big gamers, digital and non-digital. So I had no shortage of people to play with and people who have big collections of strange games I've never heard of and opportunities to play new things. And one of those was, for a time, Ananda Gupta, designer of Twilight Struggle, was an employee at Firaxis, and he and I became friends. And he introduced me to that game. I got to play Twilight Struggle for the first time with him, and at the time I wasn't yet aware how treasured that game is and how much of a treat that really was. But that was what really opened my eyes to the CDG genre, and a way to express a historical period in a board game that felt really authentic, but at the same time really available to the players. Like, I didn't know really hardly anything about the Cold War, but I feel like I felt the way that they felt, and like I really fought the Cold War. And so that was like stars in my eyes. And I thought, I really want to make one of these just to see if I can do it, to see if I can express a period with as much life as he did. And the only thing that made sense to try was the War of 1812, because that's been a favorite of mine for many years. I've long been a sort of just a hobbyist fan of naval history, and certainly the War of 1812 is a high point for American naval history. And so that was my entry into learning about the larger war. I read a bunch of books and did a lot of research, and I took up the torch about 5 years ago and sort of nibbled at it until I got to a place that was ready to submit a little over 1 year ago. And piece by piece, been working with my testers and my friends, and then eventually Compass when they picked it up.
How different of an experience is it going from the digital world of game design development to what you've done now with your first published tabletop game? Is there anything you feel was different about the overall process, I know it's probably easier to do play testing with a computer game, probably, because you've already got your game, so to speak, in beta, alpha, and beta.
True.
So playing, right?
I mean, yes and no. On the one hand, you have the advantage that you can play against the computer pretty quick, but on the other hand, there's no bugs with a piece of pen and paper. So if I'm playing a playtest on Dawn's Early Light and I don't like the rule, I could just say to the players, "All right, it's going to be this now. Play it this way from now on." I can immediately see how they react. So big changes are, game studio, we work in teams, often large teams. So I'm used to having lots of people to collaborate with, and also like armies of artists and producers taking care of lots of details. So this was a solo project right up until the very end. I didn't meet Nadir, who's the artist and who did a fabulous job on the product, until it was almost ready to publish. So it was just me getting my friends and colleagues and interested parties together to play test when I could. So it was it was a lonelier project, but no less rewarding, just different. And then, like I said, playtesting, the experience was really, really different. I'm used to having, computers and teams of QA testers available to test for specific things, and also playing the game a lot myself. But with Dawn Through the Light, a 2-player game, I can't play it on my own. Also, it was important that I didn't. So I would get other players together and see how they reacted to the rules. And I would have to sit next to them, like, just biting my knuckle whenever they did something that was like misinterpreting a rule or like clearly veering the.
You couldn't tell them right there. That would ruin the whole.
I had to be like,
right?
If they would ask me what something meant, I'd be like, "Well, read the rules." And if the rules didn't explain it, well, that's how I learn. That's how the game gets better. or if they did something that went totally off the rails from where I wanted the experience to go, I have to like, read into that and think about why are they making these calls? Like what are the elements in the game that they're reacting to? And they could answer me to some extent, but it was just a very interesting, like very deeply embedded and kind of a wild way to test a game, to sit and watch people play it and not be able to participate.
Yep.
But in the end, it definitely paid off because I learned an awful lot from those folks, and the game came out pretty well.
Let me do this. Let me show the game real quick. I'm just going to focus on the game for a second. It's not going to be probably the best live view of it, guys. I'm sorry. Limited capabilities here to get a big focus view, but you got the back. It's a big box, by the way, so you can see it's at least a 2-inch box from Compass. So I'll just open it up just to give everybody an idea. If you unfortunately don't have the game yet, maybe after tonight you will get it. But we've got the deck of cards here. Hopefully you can see that okay. So we've got some cards here that come with the game. We don't care about the dice. Everybody has dice, right? So the rule booklet came out really nice. I wanted to compliment you on the rules. So just looking at these rules, they look really solid, really big. I like the really big type, that you have here. The type looks great. Let me see if I can make this a little brighter for everybody. But as you go through it, it's not much text on each page. So as I'm thumbing through these pages, and big illustrations, obviously, a lot of examples, a lot of illustrated examples. So,
I mean, I really took that to heart from other games I played, that especially when you have complicated rules that need like a situation to demonstrate, like big, beautiful illustrations. Nadir Alfaro, who's the artist, like I wrote all of the text in the rule book, but he did all of the layout. And wonderful. He composed all the illustrations, and we worked really closely together to get them just right. So a lot of credit for the quality of the rules goes to him too.
So we've got about 4 pages of card history explaining each card. 5 pages. 5 pages of card history, so that's great. So it really gets in. That's great to get the historical flavor down. So while I'm looking at the rules, probably now is an opportune time for me to ask you, what you say was your biggest design challenge as you were designing this game, or what changed the most during development? Was there any particular mechanics or rules that you just found to be the toughest part of this project for you?
Sure. So I based like sort of my initial approach at the game, not on my experience with Twilight Struggle, but on another game called Labyrinth: The War on Terror, which is an area control asymmetrical game about the U.S. and the fighting terrorism in the Middle East. It sort of like got me off on a great track on the land war, but my aim was always to express the War of 1812 in its like fullest extent in its global situation. So that meant the politics, the economies, the Indians, which were a huge factor, the Napoleonic Wars and its impact on how Britain was able to fight, and of course the naval war, which wasn't much of a war at all from Britain's perspective because they outnumbered the Americans like 1,000 to 1. But there are a lot of significant events that happened that changed public opinion or changed the way deployments were affected, that changed the timing of things. It ended up being very critical. So it was hard to balance all of those different things that happened at such different levels of abstraction and at such different speeds. And my goal was to get them to all play on the same play space. So every turn, all of them were relevant. That's what I think is kind of the magic of CDG, is it can make things that are very different matter at the same moment. And the player has really like intense dilemmas. And because I love the naval war, because that was my first entry into 1812, I struggled to find the right shape for the naval war because I wanted it to be bigger, because I personally enjoy it. But it just didn't happen at the same pace as the land war. So in the game, the naval war is highly abstracted and is mostly represented as like a contest for points. And naval events come through relatively rarely, which is how it should be. But it was hard for me to like come to grips with doing that, just kind of being a fan of it on my own. And it took a lot of playtesting, and the naval mechanics changed a lot over the course of iteration as people sort of told me about what they were thinking about how they were using their navies. And I realized like, oh, this doesn't match. Like this isn't the right level of weight for this. This isn't the right mesh of the experiences. So I won't go through all the like various other forms that it had, but I wish I could play a game just about the naval war, but it would just not be this game. Like it doesn't belong bigger than it was. So I'm pretty satisfied with where it came out, even though, at the end of the day, I might like to go pick up my copy of C.S. Forrester again, just to relive it.
And then let's talk about the system itself. So what led you actually to go with a card-driven? I didn't open up the cards, but there's obviously a lot of cards in the game, and there's 5 pages, more than 5 pages of the card history, so everybody can get the history behind each card. Looks like, or almost every card in the game.
Every card.
What was the purpose behind the card-driven system, and why did you apply it to this particular topic? I know you're interested in the topic already. Just curious, what made you decide to go with a card-driven system, basically?
Well, yeah, like I mentioned about learning about the genre from Ananda and from playing other games, I was really impressed at how it did sort of that thing I was just describing, but how making a game that was comprehensible, where players could sort of accessibly play it and make strategic decisions, but they could incorporate factors that were like wildly far-flung or momentary or very singular. You know, you can have a game where like a single event, like something like when the British burned the White House, and it would be kind of silly for the game to have a system about White House burning, because that happened exactly once, and it was only kind of important for the morale of the U.S. You know, it's not a significant strategic objective, but it would also be a poor expression of the War of 1812 without it, because it was kind of a singular moment. So the CDG genre is like, well, I felt was perfect for that. A game where you could have history. You could have really solid systems, like the systems that move units around and fight over cities, and then ships move around. Like all those things happen all the time, and it's important that's like the meat of the game. But then the events that come through that can just throw things out of whack, and they can represent all of this historical richness, but in a way that's up to the players, that the players get to wrestle with anew every time. Every good CDG I've played does a great job of that. That's what I felt was the magic of the genre, and then felt like I was ideally suited to the War of 1812 with all of its curiosities and quirks. So that's why I felt like it was a match.
So I'm gonna flip you from designer to player for a moment. So your design, which side? Well, to be fair, I'm gonna make it a 2-part question. So my first part question is, for each side, how would you approach playing either side? How are they different? And do you have a preference for which side? If you were going to play your own game, which side would you decide you'd probably sit down and play, and why?
Well, yeah, I'll take those in order. So the two sides are fairly similar in their objectives, but start with pretty different conditions. And then they have a suite of unique operations. The British can do things the Americans can't do, and so on. So the Americans are the simpler force to play, because they have kind of like a reliable source of power and a reliable goal. They just build a big army and try to take over Canada. At the same time, though, they need to stop sort of the degradation of their very large territory from a variety of threats that the British can throw at them. Now, the answer to that is usually the same: have an army in the right place. But the game is sort of good at making sure that your army never works exactly as well as you want it to, because that's not how it works historically. So the Americans' challenge is to sort of like kind of push and shove and like squeeze their army into the right spot in the right time in order to sort of win a conquest victory. So as the Americans, my advice is like, make use of your superior recruiting power. You have access to more troops. Solidify your Canadian frontier as quickly as you can, and do everything you can to incentivize the British not to bother you in the South. Like, try to do something about Nashville, New Orleans, and Savannah, and try to get the British to leave you alone there. Or just make it not worth your while, because then your larger army size will eventually win the war of attrition, and you'll be able to take some significant Canadian targets. And if you can't win an outright conquest victory, you can win on points.
Okay.
So the British are a quirky start, because they have very small territory and a much smaller army to start with, and access to less of it over time as well. They just didn't have as many troops on the continent for most of the war, but they have access to the sea. They have total control over the oceans, and they have the Indian allies, which is like a strange but can be very powerful component. So they're not set up to conquer America anytime soon. They really got to build to that, usually through landing attacks from their squadrons. But they're set up to be harassers and to be distractors that stop the Americans from building up any kind of momentum. So you can sort of hold them off along the Canadian frontier, while at the same time you step up blockades and you start to squeeze the Americans' troop deployment so they can't afford to leave their cities exposed. and you can send your lighter forces with Indian allies around the frontiers and around the west to raid towns or to just threaten far-flung American territory that they have to defend. So you force the Americans to disperse. And then if you find a moments of opportunity, you can sort of make a dive for one of the coastal cities like Boston or New York. And if you can hold on to one of those, that's a really strong fixed point that you can use to squeeze out a point victory, or if possibly even a conquest victory. So I do think the British are harder to play because you have to sort of keep all of these different forces balanced, and like you have to pick and shove and tear at the Americans from 3 different angles pretty much. But it's also really satisfying to pull off. So having played the game,
I'm just gonna say right now, because you're a naval fan, you prefer playing that side because they've got the naval, and you said you were a huge naval nut. So I'm just gonna guess on the side that you're gonna go. That's the side you want to play.
It's funny because the Warrior 12 was really it was a circus at sea for the Americans more than for the British. The British life at sea was kind of mundane. It was a lot of convoys and blockades. All of the spectacular moments, most of them belong to the American frigates, and they were like spectacular single ship victories. But in the game, at least, the British are definitely, I think, a more challenging side to play, but then for that reason, more rewarding. And due to my experience, I prefer to play them to see if I can pull it off, every time.
Makes a lot of sense. Well, let's do this. I want to go to our audience. There's a few comments for sure and questions. So Mo, actually not far from where I am at all, Maurice Fitzgerald. So he said, yeah, Don's Early Light looks really good. Looking forward to playing sometime. If I'm not mistaken, I think I have to update your product page, by the way. We've got a few videos, I think some reviews as well of your game, of your design. Great. So I need to add that to the page. I'll try to do that tomorrow, actually, for everybody. But yeah, Mo gave it a thumbs up. He also did an unboxing first look video of your game, which is much better than I can do with the way I'm set up here. So thanks to Mo for that comment. Let's go through here. Gilbert Collins says he's honored to see the box cover that was chosen, the art for Death of Brock. Which is
it's a beautiful painting. Actually, I think the original plan, I don't know if it was Bill or Nadir, suggested putting one of the Andrew Jackson Battle of New Orleans ones, and I was like, no, he's famous enough. You got to put a Canadian image on there. Like all of the most of the heroism in the war really happened in Canada. And I know it's a very special historical period to them. So I insisted, and we got the Death of Brock instead, which is a beautiful painting.
You made Gilbert's day. He's a resident of Canada. And then Matt made the comment about your demographic here.
It's true. Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. We are sort of in that hobby. And then here we got some funny comments in here. So John's making an observation about most of the fighting. Some more comments here from Tom over on YouTube. Let's see, we've got a lot of comments in here, so I'm trying not to miss any.
Sure.
This is Jack here. Jack, good point, Jack. Do you agree with Jack's sentiments here at all?
Yes.
David? Yeah. Yeah, you agree?
No, America was like, that's kind of when they got over being just feeling like a provincial colonial group and started to act like a real country.
And then John's saying he might order it tonight, but he says, does much actually happen in Iowa? So
a little. There was some Indian fighting out there, but mostly it was just kind of on the fringe. Part of Tecumseh's War.
There we go. Here's a question: is the Battle of New Orleans included, maybe as a card, or just how would you say?
Yeah. Yes and no. New Orleans is a city that can be fought over, so you can have your own Battle of New Orleans. Andrew Jackson cards and cards about the Baratarian pirates, Jean Lafitte, who played a critical role in that battle, are in there. So you can essentially reassemble it from card events and from timing. But like with any good CDG, your Battle of New Orleans could be quite a bit different than the historic one.
All right, that's good to know. And then Ken over on YouTube's asking, is there any chance, we'll get to this in a moment, because as you saw that comment on our forum, a Constant World forum, they were saying, I hope he's going to do more games. So Ken's already got some proposal for you. Any chance of a tactical Civil War game? I know we'll talk here in a little bit about, or maybe we can just jump to it now. Thoughts about what your next act will be after Don's Early Light? What kind of what game, what topic you might be doing next?
Yeah, I don't know. I had a really fun time making this, and I think the reception's been good enough that I feel inspired to keep going. Definitely want to make another one, and I certainly have had a great experience publishing with Compass. So hopefully you'll see it under this label at some point. Yeah, actually, I was just exploring some topics in the Civil War era just the other day, doing some brainstorming. None of them are quite so specific as this is like a named battle or this is the whole Civil War, of which there are dozens and dozens of excellent games. One of the reasons I wanted to make this one is not only because I love the period, but also because all of the other 1812 based war games out there, I felt were either too narrow or too detail oriented, and I wanted to try a different take on it. So it would be a little bit of a mix of finding a topic that I love, that I can really sink my teeth into, and there's lots of those around the Civil War period, but also finding one that I felt was underserved or that, there could be a real enjoyment of in the community for a new take. So just as a toss out, I was looking at the Bleeding Kansas period and sort of the tragic prelude of the Civil War as as an interesting opportunity, something that has a lot of the sort of shall we say the fun mess of a historic period where things didn't work out the way they were supposed to. That makes for a good basis for a CDG. But I haven't gotten too far on that. I could pick up that topic, or I might find myself going down another road. I don't know. It's early days.
Do you think you're gonna stick with the CDG system that you want to do a design? You're gonna look at it from the prism of a CDG design approach.
I'm definitely going to start there. I thought it was very effective, and I think there's a lot that genre can do. In fact, Ananda's newest game, Imperial Struggle, that just came out, already made some interesting sort of left field switches on some CDG conventions, like the fact that they don't have cards the same way, the token selection, but like they were able to put a system on this really grand, century spanning conflict in a very elegant way. And so I was inspired by some of their out of the box ideas and thinking like, oh, I can reach out of the box too. So yeah, I definitely want to start from the CDG, but I won't feel afraid to start trying some wackier approaches to stuff.
Great. Here's some more comments. Board Game Bloke over on YouTube says he likes your comment about how the game events are inspired by real events, but as you mentioned, like for Battle of New Orleans, that rigidity of recreating it to that sameness. That's not necessarily the case. It's just you're capturing the history, but the outcome could be definitely different.
That's very much my perspective.
And then he followed up. He said Brits are quirky, so I've been told. So I'm sure that came up while you were talking.
You know better than me.
There you go. Another question here. It looks like the system would model well the French and Indian War.
That'd be a good one.
Yeah.
I really liked. It was a few years ago. A Few Acres of Snow. Thought it was like a really interesting, elegant, very simple take on the game, on the period. I got to play that with my colleagues. I was like, oh, this is really clever. Kind of a deck building strategy game. And I wouldn't have thought of combining those two. It's another topic that's really well served by some really excellent games, but it does have a lot of rich history. So yeah, I mean, that's something I could look into too. I like that period as well.
Mo, I'll find out why you don't have the game yet, because we definitely want you to do that first look video, the unboxing. So you do a great job at that. So I'll look into that. Also, I just want to give a shout out to, we've got some international viewers on live. And I'm afraid I should have I wish I had a little time zone calendar above me. So like when I see Seoul, Korea, now Kiev, Ukraine, I wish I could just say, okay, they're at this hour, or definitely Australia is like morning. I know that just from past episodes, but yeah, it's really neat to see people up at different times for sure. Here's another question, personal question for you.
Oh, I wondered if somebody was going to ask that. Unfortunately, no relation. My surname was a latter-day change from some Scottish clan names that were from back in my family. So I'm not related to any historic McDonoughs, unfortunately, though that would be cool. Thomas McDonough's defense of Lake Champlain, Battle of Plattsburgh, was a pivotal moment in the war.
Do you have any book recommendations, or can you tell us a little bit about, it sounds like you're pretty deep into the history of this era. It's your favorite era. So in terms of readings, does anything jump to mind if you're going to recommend something to pick up on Amazon or whatever?
I definitely think that the book that really got me going from the naval side was C.S. Forester's The Age of Fighting Sail, which is a book specifically about the single ship actions in the War of 1812, and about how innovations in ship design and sort of like a season or a generation or two of complacency on the part of the British Navy led to this like huge string of upsets that totally demolished their sense of superiority and like, shook the honor of the British Navy, and at the same time buoyed the Americans. So that's a really good one. It's beautifully written. He has a great way with describing the way the battles are fought, and also describing the larger implications too.
Do you have John Longshore was proposing this as a 2-volume set? Are you familiar with
that? I'm not familiar with that, but I should say I haven't read it. But if that's a good recommendation, I would second it.
We have a great audience, so we've probably got some military historians on here and stuff. So it's good. A little back and forth. It's a win-win for everybody here. So it's an interesting discussion about recommendations for sure.
That one sounds like a really good exhaustive study of the war. The Forrester book would be a great primer if you're just like, I would like to learn a little bit more. Yeah.
Great. And then again, back to some game recommendations we already talked about. I think the French Indian War, just to do expanding the system. Some E4 Airmen on YouTube asked about Invasion of North America by Americans.
Oh, that'd be a good one. Actually, last winter read through Rit Atkinson's trilogy, which is excellent. And An Army at Dawn was really compelling. That would make a great starting point for sure.
Great. And then Board Game Bloke did point out, I'm familiar that there is a title of a game called Bleeding Kansas.
You're further in the research even than I am. I would definitely give that one a look and see if
give it a look from Decision. They have that covered for sure. Let's see what else we have here. I'm just looking at the comments here off to the side. So Andrew Rowland is 143 in Australia. Good to know, Andrew. Thanks for letting me know. And it's oh my gosh, Dimitro, it's 4:43 in the morning in the Ukraine, and he's up. Wow. Okay, Dimitro, you win the Iron Man for tonight, Dimitro. So that's pretty amazing. There's his post. So that is wow. And then, like you said, yes, Rick Atkinson for sure. So great comments. So let's see. What have I not asked you? I hope I'm asking all the right questions. I don't think there's any more questions from the audience, but I think we've got a really good look at the game. So I will add, I think there's been some videos already done. I will double check. I think I've seen 1 or 2. Definitely been some replay articles on your game, some early replay articles on the game as well. So I'll definitely work on getting those posted as well. So we're really excited to have, we really feel humbled and appreciative of you, David, that we could publish your first tabletop non-digital world game. We hope it was a good positive experience.
It was great. Thank you so much.
Product launch has been interesting, and I hope this helps the person who was berating me earlier. There's not enough information from the designer about the game when you market at Compass. You got to have more info. So I hope this is added to the rule booklet we made available. So we're really eager to see the success of this game, see more comments from our customers about the game, and we definitely hope to do some more great games with you. Some whatever you have plans to do, we look forward to support that. And
me too.
I'll leave you with any closing words. We have a nice group of around almost 70 folks on tonight, and there'll be a lot of people on the replay, of course.
Sure. Thanks everybody for signing in. I hope you get the chance to try the game and enjoy it. I know it's kind of hard times to find people to play with these days, but there's no hurry. And I'm glad. Thanks to Compass for inviting me to join on the stream tonight and for publishing the game. I definitely feel like a lot of love from the wargame community and feel excited to get cracking on something new. So I've got lots of great ideas. I'll keep you posted.
Great. We're going to adopt you as our younger beloved son. How's that?
Yeah.
Because
I'll be a protege.
Perfect. All right. Well, David, thank you so much for joining us on Compass Live. It was really a pleasure to talk with you. Learned a lot about the game, which is, I think, what it's all about. And I'm sure if there's other questions, and maybe we'll do something in Paper Wars, whatever we can do to support you and the game and our customers, we look forward to doing that. So thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Yeah, my pleasure. Oh, quick note, you can always, I'm active on the Consim forums and on the BGG forums. So if you ever think of something you want to ask, or there's a rule that you're pretty sure is wrong, let me know. I'll be there.
All right. Thank you so much, David. You have a good night.
You too. Take care, everybody.
Bye-bye. So I hope everybody enjoyed to get to know a little bit more about Dawn's Early Light, the War of 1812. So seeing a lot of favorable comments about that game. So I'm really happy to see that. What I was thinking of doing next, actually, is I wanted to switch gears a little bit tonight. So I haven't really spent too much time, at least lately, because of all the pre-orders, talking about some of the other projects that have been worked on for the past few weeks, and I thought this would be an interesting game to cover simply because I have a history with John Edwards, and I basically work with him on all his designs that he has. And as fortune would have it, I actually started the relationship with him pre-Compass days when I was with Consum Press. So we've had on pre-order for quite a while a game called the Deluxe 5th Edition of Russian Campaign. So I thought I'd take a moment to show you what we're doing at Compass with John Edwards. Actually, John Edwards approached us about his idea to do back to the original 1974 edition of Russian Campaign. And this was actually part of the pre-order Palooza. Since we have somebody on from the Ukraine tonight, I think it's apropos that for him to be up at 4:30 in the morning, I think it's apropos that I do something that talks about the Eastern Front, World War II. So let's take a moment, and I'd like to share with you again a little bit about Russian campaign. So I'm gonna share a few things here, and I'll actually just zoom in on the some of the artwork we have here. So you've seen this already to a degree. So the status of the project right now is we're wrapping it up. We're going to have the rules done over the weekend, which is the last component. So it's going to the printers next week. So that's just exciting news for us. It's always I get happy feet to know that I'm finishing a project, because that helps keep me off the street. I have a responsibility to get projects done at Compass and out to you guys. So it's always exciting to know projects are getting wrapped up. So here you can see the front of the box. Also want to share with you the back of the box here. So just to give you a high level perspective of this game and definitely how it differs from the Deluxe 5th Edition, which is being offered by through GMT. That will be out next year. This, again, John Edwards approached me a few months ago and said, John, I really am not so fond anymore of these really complex, overwrought games. I'm really more of the simpler type of gamer now. And to be honest, that's going back to those early days of gaming and my original designs back in the 70s or early 80s. So he says, what I'm really excited about and what I'd like Compass to do for me is I would like you to take my original 1974 design of Russian Campaign. And I wish I should have pulled out the box for you to actually show you what the big flat box looks like from 1974. But long story short, this focuses on his original game. And again, it's a much simpler, friendlier, kinder version of Russian Campaign. This was before Avalon Hill, and then others added a lot of rules to it. If I was going to do a side-by-side comparison of this original game to, say, what's coming from GMT, they're both very different games, and they're both going to be great games for you to have. But this one is definitely for nostalgia purposes. If you want a very simple, fun game you can finish in one sitting and one map that doesn't take up more space. It's not a two mapper like the other one. This is one map, one counter sheet, maybe 1/3 the amount of pages of rules, I would say even. So this is, again, the original was a much simpler version of the classic Russian Campaign. So that is the key difference here, just to make that clear. And again, I'll get the box art. If it's not on the website, we'll make sure to do that. We do have the map here. So this is, again, the full-size 22 by 34-inch map. It's going to be mounted. It's going to be a mounted map with the nice fancy punch-out counters with the rounded edges to them, rounded corners. I'll just zoom in here for a little bit. You can see we've got some information here. We've got the movement chart, game turn track, tracking the weather, ground conditions, weather table, German order of arrival, eliminated units, and again, eliminated units is special. That's just if the unit's not surrounded, they can come back as replacements. If the unit is surrounded as a result of the attack, it gets a surrender result. It is not eligible to return to play. But you can see we have everything here. We've got the Stuka table for the German side. Then we go down here. We've got Ukraine in here for our brave person who's on right now, 4:30 in the morning, almost 5 a.m. So we've got him covered here. I think he's near Kharkov, actually. 500. I think he's 500 clicks outside of Kharkov. And then I know this is just reverse. I could rotate this, but basically same concept here. Same movement chart, Russian order of battle, a bigger eliminated unit box than the German one. Probably a good reason for that if you think about at least the beginning stages of the war. You need a bigger holding box. And then pretty much the same content. And then there's some special rules about sea movement. We've got a lot of. I'm really big on mnemonics for a game. So when you're playing a game, I think it's really important to have a lot of helpful information to have that handy on the map. So I think we've been very successful as far as our goal to do that. And by the way, the artist was Bruce Urian for the map. My eyes are aging. So what we have here is you'll have player aid cards that includes all the charts and tables on the map. You'll also have separate player aid cards that are bigger for you to use. So you're not going to have to lean over to look at the game map or take your glasses off to view. You can just go to the player aid cards. So again, here's the counter sheet. And again, this is just a single counter sheet. The original edition of Russian Campaign didn't introduce the concept of remnants yet as far as combat results. So this is the very first edition. So again, it's a smaller counter mix. The scope of the game and the number of pieces is less. So again, this is why it's playable in one sitting versus say the later editions of Russian Campaign. So this is a much gentler, simpler version that you can really get into and play. So you've got the single counter sheet right here. So again, you can see right here the units. What we did with the back, which is an improvement over the original edition, is we have setup information. All the setup information or the reinforcement entry codes are on the flip side of the counter. And the original edition didn't have a reverse side of the counter at all. So that's definitely an improvement. The railhead markers are going to be important for gameplay purposes because the Germans need to capture, or you have to track the advance of German units controlling rail lines in Russia, and then they can use those rail lines as long as they occupied them on the turn prior. So you need to use those railhead control markers. And of course, we've got the partisan units for the Russians, etc. We've got the Hitler and Stalin markers, which is a factor in play. We've got Stukas, and you'll see artillery. We've got 2 artillery barrage markers. I'll talk about that in a moment because I do want to share with you, and this is the very first time we're doing this, and I'll go back just to the focused view here, is I want to share with you, we're just wrapping up the rules now. So again, I cannot reiterate or emphasize enough that compared to any other recent Russian campaign, we're going back for nostalgia purposes back to 1974. This is the original Jedco version. We stayed true to the original Jedco version because, again, John Edwards wanted his design to be honored, and he wants it to be a simple game you can get into. So you can see the table of contents is quite short. It's only 12 pages of rules. Believe it or not, it's very short, so less than 12 pages of content. You can see here that we got the components again. We've got again, all this information's on a player aid card as well. So all the information about the unit, the nationalities, the color codes. If you can actually see here, the setup codes we used on the back of the markers. So we've got color coding information here if they're reinforcements. So again, we've got everything on the back of the counters to really help you with gameplay. Sequence of play is pretty straightforward. That's obviously going to be help you with the gameplay. So let's go to the next set of 2 pages here. So we're on page 3 and 4. So again, really simple, straightforward game system, to be honest. So simple movement rules, standard zones of control. We've got what's automatic victory is really what I would call a modern day man's version of overrun rules. They called it automatic victory. And to avoid confusion, we just used the same terminology that John Edwards used. Got the important railhead markers because of the rail movement, how you have to track that. I've got some combat examples here. Again, combat's very straightforward as well. Talks about, again, what type of elimination, if the unit can come back as a replacement or not. Talks about isolation, effects of being out of supply where you would get eliminated, or there's also combat supply. Then, of course, reinforcements, the replacements, and then, of course, the special rules. And you can see the units on page 10. We get into the special rules of the game already. So, again, this is a game you can get into and finish in a single sitting. I'm actually looking forward. I'm going to take my 13-year-old son and play this game with him several times. And we're going to finish it in single sittings for sure. And then I'm going to graduate up and maybe do the Deluxe 5th edition for the full-on experience, which will take the complexity up another 2 to 3 notches. For the bigger version, but this is perfect for a single sitting game. So what we did, I want to mention this also, since this is a sneak peek of the rules, you'll see it's not quite done yet. I'm adding the rules index tomorrow. That's that blank area on the back cover page. So We're going to have a rules index, and then we added a timeline for all the key battles and operations during the Russian campaign, just for historical purposes. But what I want to focus on here is we've added, I think this is interesting, we added some rules that actually came later in the Jedco 2 release. So that is what we call the optional rules. So we are going to introduce some optional rules for you. We want to add that as a bonus to you. We could have put them into Paper Wars later. We might still do some other things with Paper Wars, but what we decided to do was we want to introduce to you all some of the rules that came into play later for Russian campaign that could be compatible with the original edition. So Jedco did a Russian campaign 2, or a Jedco 2 release, where some of these rules did appear later. So what we did here was we introduced 7 different optional rules for you to choose from. And then we did add some notes, some reference notes, like is there a play balance effect, for example, if we're introducing access city control requirements to the game. So there's a note about that. We added the very simple rule about offboard rail movement. That was in the Jedco 2 release. Again, it's optional though. The main point is we want to stay true to the original design of the game. That's the main point. And then you can see Russian artillery barrage. This is one personally, and I've noticed on Board Game Geek and on the Constant World forum, typically this is not recommended for play because the Germans already have it. They already have a tough sled of it to try to win the game in Russian campaign. And the Russians, although it's true to history, to deploy these Russia artillery barrages once in 43 and twice in 44, that's really tough on the Germans. So, but maybe it will come into play if you adopt another optional rule that we make available. But we do include a note about the Russia artillery barrage that will have a definite effect on the play balance. That's going to go against the Germans. And then Jedco 2 release did mention the Italian replacements limitation. That made sense as an optional rule. Also, the optional rule about an armor attack, that probably is going to hurt the Germans more than the Russians, especially at the onset of the game. I didn't add a note on that, but I think it's pretty, everybody will have their own opinion. It's going to hurt the Axis player for sure at the beginning with the armor units, attack strength being impacted, cut in half, but it's also going to hurt the Russians later phases of the war. But we also added, and this is important again for play balance, if you're having a tough sled of it as the Germans in the game, we have this optional rule, which was in Jedco 2 release, which is to reflect Barbarossa, where you're not shackled as the German player. You have unlimited attack options. But the standard game, the standard edition game, there are specific rules about the first segment of turn 1. As the German player, you are restricted to what operations you can undertake at the beginning, the onset of the campaign. This is where we take that limitation away. So this would be a rule to consider, that if I'm getting beat up by my son and I'm playing the Germans, maybe I need this rule to have a chance to beat my son at the game as the Germans. I'm going to need some help. But again, I just wanted to point out, again, we wanted to add a little bit of bonus material here, because again, we can benefit from knowing there was a Jedco 2 release. But again, the original standard game, before we get to all these optional rules, we're going to, again, the rules stop here on page 10. You can jump right into it. And again, those others are just optional for you to decide, or your play partner to decide whether you want to adopt them or not. So again, we're really excited about the game. We think it's going to do great. I'm also excited equally about the 5th edition deluxe game. I think the 2 games are just the perfect timing to have both games, to compare the original game with the enhanced graphics, the improved rules, etc., addressing all the errata. You've got that now at a really great price point from Compass, and it's mounted map. Nice rounded big, they're half-inch counters, but we had to make them smaller to make it fit a single map. So I got that part wrong. I just remembered to fit it on one map. They are half-inch counters, but again, if you look at the counters, there's hardly any information on them. So half-inch works great for the game. But then this is going to be great. You're going to have the deluxe game available next year as well. And that's a much more detailed experience of the game. So really experiencing both next year, I think, is going to be a wonderful, wonderful experience of the game. So I hope you're all looking forward to it. Let's go here quickly. I'm going to go to any questions there might be out there. So let's see if we got any new comments that have come in here. So thanks, Mo. Thanks for the positive words. I really appreciate that very much. Let's see. Let's see. Successor generals. Yeah, yeah. My son, he's actually he's really into PlayStation 4, and he's already telling me. I guess we got to look for PlayStation 5 for Christmas. I think it's coming out or pre-order stopped already, but he's really big. He's really big on some of the PlayStation games, but he did kick my butt at the Awful Green Things from Outer Space from TSR, which I think Steve Jackson Games did later. So he really kicked my butt at that game. So we're going to do more military stuff, and we're going to play. This is going to the printers next week. We're going to be playing this game early next year, I hope. So I'm really excited about that. Andrew says, cool, my son beats me often in war games. So yeah, Andrew, I can relate to that experience with the Awful Greens things. He actually, I don't want to talk about it. It was such a bad experience. It was horrible. Yeah, Gilbert, hope the clarifications on Russian campaign have helped. There's so many versions out there. So that's really a good point. So again, the elevator pitch is really simple. The first project, which is the Deluxe 5th edition, that's all the bells and whistles. Think of it as Advanced Squad Leader, where you have, all the, everything that's been developed for the game since the original Squad Leader. You've got all the stuff. Like I've got all my Squad Leader stuff. That's going to be you when you get Deluxe 5th edition Russian campaign. I've got the full Russian campaign. It's 2 full-size maps, 3 counter sheets or whatever. Big. It's got tons of optional rules. It's got tons of variant rules from old published articles. It's the whole bowl of wax. So that's the whole enchilada, as Dean Essig would say back in HomerCon days. It's the big enchilada. But then you've got, as John Edwards says, I'm really a fan of the simpler. For nostalgia reasons, I really like the older, simpler games. And we're like, great, because we can update the graphics, we can address errata, we can really kill it with the 74 edition. We love the idea of doing an original edition game from John Edwards. Why not? So that's what you're going to get in Compass's game. And also, if you look at the price point, it's priced fantastic. It's unbelievable for a mounted game of a game with this type of a storied history. You'll be able to go back to the first day of Russian campaign, and it's gone through 5+ editions. You're going to be able to go back to the original incarnation, how John Edwards brought it all together. And I think it's just going to be a fantastic single sitting game. I think the game's going to do just fantastic. I'm really excited to get it out. So I'm glad, again, the clarification I hope gets. I definitely recommend, as James says here, it's a disservice not to get both games. It's not like, oh, they're so similar. It's like, no. If you actually saw both games and you set them up side by side, you'd be saying, hell no. There's no way these 2 games are similar. It's like saying, take scenario 1 from Squad Leader, the infantry attack scenario in the factories, and compare that to Advanced Squad Leader. No way in hell they're that similar. So that's why I'm really, as you can tell, I'm really excited about both games coming out, and I'm excited to get my son playing that Compass game with me. Let's see here. Is the 5th edition backward compatible? Can you play it as the base game? No, I mean, if you think about it, Avalon Hill really changed things once they got a hold of the game and they added more stuff. For example, they introduced remnants and things like that. So to be honest, to really appreciate the original game, it should be just a small single map, single counter sheet. To try to reconstruct it from 2 big oversized maps and 3 counter sheets, and then the standard rules from the deluxe edition, they're a lot more rules than the original edition. So it's going to be really tough to. I wouldn't do it. I'm just saying. If there's a way to do it, I guess what you'd have to do is you'd have to take the original rules of 74, take the counter sheet from the 74 game, because again, I think there's just too much going on there. I don't know. I just say, you know what, make your life easy. I would hit the easy button on that, Martin, and just say, if you want to experience for nostalgia purposes the initial game with some flavor added in for the later Jedco 2 release with the optional rules, have at it. But to be honest, if you're really looking for that big experience, obviously that's going to be that 5th edition. And I don't think you're going to take the 5th edition to try to go back. It's not really It's not designed to be that way. The 5th edition is designed to have everything for you. It's like taking Advanced Squad Leader and saying, I want to go back to basic Squad Leader scenario 1, but I've got all this stuff and I got to figure out what do I cut out. So that would just be my personal recommendation. I could be wrong when both games are released. Maybe you'll prove me wrong. The older, simpler is great. I think so just to start. Although Claystone has me convinced otherwise now. He does fantastic Facebook postings on really complex games. He's convinced me now that Campaign for North Africa can be played and enjoyed. I've watched him post and play it, and it's amazing the detail of the game. It was such a rich storytelling experience, how he told the story of playing Campaign for North Africa. I think I have a renewed appreciation for the more complex games as well. So, but yeah, I love the simpler games too. So Mo said here, Compass version is the classic edition. Yeah, it's on the title of the box. So you can't miss that it's the classic edition. And yes, Mo, I agree. And John Edwards, just so you know, John Edwards is in the former camp. He's going to play only the classic edition. John Edwards, he's not going to even try to play the Consum Press edition. It's too much for him. That's not his thing anymore. And whereas other people, maybe the classic edition, maybe that's not for them either. So people are going to fall in different camps, but I think that's okay that we offer both. I think that's what's exciting about it. I still beat my 13-year-old son, but he's getting taller than you. Yeah, I get it for sure. Awful Green Things. Yeah, that's a great. I got the big version, which was fantastic. Simpler games. Yeah, simpler games. This will get played in a single sitting. That's another thing about. I don't know if it's true about Pass of Glory. I think Pass of Glory is an awesome game, but maybe that's a single sitting game. I've heard it can take a while to play. Greg's game that I showed you earlier today, Imperial Tide. That's going to be. That's a game that you can finish a lot faster, sort of like Pacific Tide. Let's see here. Yeah, I'm glad they're both done. So I'm really excited. I get to do the rules index actually tomorrow. That's my job tomorrow, is work on the rules index for the Russian Campaign Original Edition, and then do the final proofing round. And I'll spend the weekend just looking at all the components one last time, and it's off to the printers we go with the original edition games. So I'm really excited about that. I'm glad, Keith, you're in on both. I definitely recommend get both games. Again, John Edwards. Phenomenal game to have the beginning version, light version, and go with the deluxe. And by the way, the deluxe version is used at WBC or will be used at WBC for tournament play. Thanks, Robert, for the kind words. I appreciate that. Yep. Russian Campaign's a great game to play. You're really going to enjoy playing it. Maybe we'll get a chance to play it sometime as well, but I have to practice with my 13-year-old son first. I got to make sure I don't get beat too bad before I go up against you. That's for sure. And I think it's definitely for younger players, like you say, James, for sure. And it's a great way. It's just a great segue game to get into the more, I think, complex games. Looking at Field Marshal. So what we're doing next, just to let everybody know, as far as John Edwards goes, we're teeing up right now as a project. We've already announced it on pre-order. It's Victory at Sea. I think that game was actually first done in 82, maybe. So it was a little bit later. But we're going to be doing Victory at Sea next with John Edwards. It's like roll the dice and have fun. I think my son will love that too, just for all the dice clanking on the table. But that will be next. And then we've got Europe at War. So John Edwards has a title. Look it up. It's called Europe at War. It's an area game. So we're looking to do that. I actually need to find, I think we've just found a developer for that game, actually. So once Victory at Sea is wrapped up, we're going to do the John Edwards game, Europe at War. And then I think Field Marshal is something that's come up a few times that we're going to definitely take a look at. Let's see here. Oops, showed that already. How long is a mythical single sitting? So all my single sittings are always at least 25 hours, just to let you know. Okay, maybe not. So a single sitting to me is a game that, you should be able to get it done in about 4 to 5 hours at a leisurely pace. I'm not thinking like a simple Euro game that's done in like an hour and a half, 2 hours. This is a war game, so I'm thinking it's going to go longer than an hour and a half. It should go longer than that. So it's going to be a nice social interaction for a few hours. So I put it around 4+ hours, and I think on our product page it's 5 hours or less. If I'm, let's see how good my memory is. I'm 56 years old, I'm guessing, but I think I said something like 5 hours or less for the full Russian campaign. Yeah, John Edwards. I mean, look what he's done for the hobby. He's just, gosh, one of the greats for sure. I think maybe because he's over in Australia, it's harder to keep track of John Edwards, all he's done for the hobby for sure. Yes, we'll play at Consum World Dallas, Expo Dallas. Looking forward to doing face-to-face gaming again one day. I'll do updates and other projects later for sure, just because of the interest of time. Rookie numbers. Okay, you're right. I don't think I've ever done 25 hours straight, to be honest. So appreciate that. Thanks for the kind words, Robert. So yeah, great. So I think, so again, I've really missed talking with you guys for just a few weeks break we had here. Just to give you other news behind the scenes, Billy Thomas, so Bill Thomas's son, who's heavily involved with Compass Games, he's moved into his own little bachelor pad of sorts. So I was testing out there's a new computer and video internet connection I'm testing out with Bill Thomas right now at his house, and the video didn't do well. It was getting frozen like I just did, right? So it was like Bill was doing this and that. So yeah, it wasn't working very well. So we're going to troubleshoot that further. But if worst comes to worst, we're not going to cancel next week. We won't do that to you guys again. We will have Bill drive over to his son's place, which is very close by. And I think I'll test his son's computer. I think his video connection is fine. So, yeah, behind me, I've got the little glowing hex thingy. That's just something for fun I picked up. Hey, it's hexes. You can't knock hexes, right? So it's just something I've got. So, when Bill Thomas yells at me, like, why isn't the Russian campaign game done yet? What's going on? I can just turn my head. I can turn over and I can look at, I can just sort of focus in on the hexagons, the glowing hexagons, and just relax. It's like the call map. You can get the call map these days. So I've got the glowing hexagons now. So hopefully that will help me get projects done quicker too. So again, I want to thank everybody. I definitely want to thank David McDonough for the great game he did. Fantastic game. Dawn's Early Light. I hope these updates on Imperial Tide, which has been at the printer for a little bit now, and also this snap update on Russian campaign, I hope that's helped a lot. I know a lot of people had questions, especially about the two different titles, how they compare, since there's going to be 2 of these games coming out next year, but I definitely recommend getting both. And I will look greatly forward to seeing you again next week with Bill Thomas. So as a reminder, you can always reach out to us on our website. Just look for that talk to me type thing where I'm waving my hand. Just reach out to me there. I'll be happy to respond back to you. Try to get back to you within 24 hours if I can. Otherwise, we will be back here next Thursday night with Bill Thomas, and it was great to be with all you guys again. I was having withdrawals, not being able to give you updates. Things have been going great. We've got some great project updates to catch up on, and we'll look forward to doing that with Bill Thomas next week. Take care, everybody. Good night.